Hi, welcome back to Mrs. Thompson's classroom again. We're continuing our unit on graphing trig functions, and particular today we're going to be looking at the cosecant function. So to start, we need to remember what cosecant is. So let's take a look at the unit circle for a minute and remind ourselves that cosecant was based on sine. So the basic ratio was hypotenuse over opposite. Okay, so let's think of some values of sine. At 0 degrees, sine is 0. So that's going to make cosecant of 0 equal to 1 over 0 and undefined. Anywhere these things are undefined, we get an asymptote. Okay? So that means over here at pi, or 180 degrees, the sine is also equal to 0. So cosecant of pi is also undefined. So I'll come and mark pi and put another asymptote. Okay, now up at pi halves, sine of pi halves is equal to 1. So that's going to make cosecant of pi halves equal to 1 over 1, which is 1. So at pi halves, I can plot a point at 1. Okay, so let's see what it's doing here maybe at pi 6. Sine at pi 6 is a half. So that means cosecant of pi 6 is 2. So here we'll be up at 2. And so what this is doing is just like cosecant, it's going to form these U-shaped curves in between our asymptotes. Now think about it for a minute. Sine starts at a 0, and then it goes up to a peak, and then comes down to a 0 at pi. And so half of a period of sine is going to flip and give me one of these U's. Now if I continue sine, when I get back to 2 pi, I also have a 0. And halfway in between, it's going to equal -1. So our cosecant is going to take this -1 value, and then it's going to flip that valley over to a U. So why is that? Well, let's finish this off real quick. Down here at 3 pi halves, sine is -1. So cosecant is also going to equal -1. So this that I've graphed is one cycle, so its period is the same as sine's at 2 pi. So remember that to draw a single period of cosecant, I have to get a top and a bottom. That makes one cycle. Okay, my range is everything less than or equal to -1 and greater than or equal to +1. Okay, my domain is x not equal to all of my pi's, and that would make k an integer. Okay, there are no zeros. It never crosses the x-axis unless we have done a vertical shift. And my asymptotes are at the same places where the domain does not, or we're not in the domain. Okay. All right, so let's do a transformation of this and get some practice. So let's remember, again, the same thing we've done before. We're going to have A times our cosecant of b times x minus n. Okay, and B and N can be any letter we want. They're not specific, just two different constants. So in this case, my B value is 1. So that means my period is going to stay at 2 pi. Okay, the pi eighths here is that N value, and so that's my phase shift. And because it is a plus and not a minus, it will be to the left. Okay, so I'm going to make this, remember that this period then is going to be, if I need to get this in terms of eighths, it's going to be 16 eighths. Okay, so I'm probably going to want to do every other tick mark here. If I'm going to have to count 16 of them, I need to make sure I have space for that. So I'm going to mark this as negative pi eighths. Okay, now, just like our cotangent, this is beginning at an asymptote. So I mark that. Okay, so this is my start, which equals an asymptote. Okay, now let's find the end by taking 16 of these and adding it to where we started. So that means I'm going to count over 16. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Where that actually ends up is 15 eighths. And that will also be an asymptote. Okay, so this right here is 2 pi. And this will be pi. Okay, now we find our mid. So the middle will be negative pi eighths plus half of the period. So instead of 16, I'll add 8. So if I go over 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I end up right here at 7 eighths. Right, this would equal 7 eighths. And that, now, for cosecant, remember I need a top and a bottom. So this is my start, this is my end, my middle is also an asymptote. Okay, and then it is what we might call our quarter points that would take negative pi, take my start and add a fourth of the period. So I'm going to divide this in 2 again and add 4. So I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. And that puts me in the middle here if I just look at my tick marks. And that will be a 1. And that gives me my U. If I go halfway in between here, and that would be 7 plus 4 would be at 11 eighths. That's where I'll get the negative 1, and that gives me my bottom U. Okay, now again, if you know how to draw sine, you would have started at 0, ended at 0, middle of 0, and you would have gone up, and you would have gone down. So cosecant is just flipping that peak into a valley and the valley into a peak. And you're just flipping sine on its head. Okay, now I can do another cycle by counting the other direction. So to get between each asymptote was counting 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 4 in between, 1, 2, 3, 4. And this will give me a bottom because they have to alternate. And then 1, 2, 3, 4 will give me a valley there. So now I have 2 full cycles of cosecant. Okay. All right, let's do one where we have a vertical shift. So this is going to move us down 1. But I start the same. So my A value is 1. The 3 is going to change my period from 2 pi to 2 pi thirds. My phase shift in this case is 0 because there's nothing added inside the parentheses. So I'm going to start at 0 at an asymptote. Okay. I'm going to go 2 pi thirds, so I'll mark these in thirds. Actually, you know what? I'm going to spread it out just a little bit. Remember, we can mark our grids however we want. So this will be pi thirds, this will be 2 thirds. So the end will be another asymptote. The middle will be another asymptote. And then the middle between that is going to give me a point at 1. But we said we were going to move down 1, so I'm going to take that point and move it down 1 slot. Okay, now let's make sure I mark that in the right place though. Where was my start? My start was at 0. So yes, indeed, this is my start. So this first peak needs to be, the first point needs to be part of the bottom of a U, needs to be up at 1, and then I'll move it down 1. Okay, the second point I plot would be at -1, but it's been moved down 1, and so I plot a point here. And so now my U's have been shifted, and this cosecant graph does have a 0 simply because it's been shifted down. And of course, we want to get more than 1 cycle, so I'll come that same distance and mark asymptotes on the other side. If this one here is a min, the one next to it will be a max and force a U going down. And then that being a max will cause my next one to be a min and cause a U going up. And now I have 2 full cycles. Okay. All right. One more. So here again, my amplitude is 1. The 4 is going to cause my period. Instead of being 2 pi, it'll be 2 pi fourths, which is a half. And then these parentheses here means that this is my phase shift. And it is going to the right. So I'll mark this as pi halves. Okay, so that's my start. That's where the asymptote goes. And then I'm going to go pi halves to get another asymptote. So pi halves plus pi halves makes pi. Halfway in between those, the midpoint is another asymptote. And halfway in between those will give me my point at 1 and at -1. And so I have a top and I have a bottom. And because we shrunk our period, they're real skinny. Okay, now let's keep this. It was a period of pi halves, so I'm going to have it going to the left. I'll have an asymptote here. I'll have an asymptote here. And those are the ends of the cycle. So the middle is another asymptote. My top, beside it would have to be a bottom. Beside it would have to be a top. And then I can continue on in this pattern. Okay. All right, so hopefully that helps you understand cosecant just a little bit. on this last example, the only thing you need to remember is that we have to take the, well, what's going on with my cursor? You have to factor out the 2. So this is going to end up being 2 times x plus pi fifths divided by 2 and make tenths. Okay, so this is my phase shift, and it'll equal pi tenths to the left. This causes my period to be 2 pi over 2. Okay, now to get those to have a common denominator, I'm going to make this, instead of 2 over 2, I'll make it 10 over 10. Okay, that actually equals pi. So the first thing I do is I mark negative pi tenths, and again, I'm going to go at the half marks here on my grid. Okay, so now that's an asymptote, because that's where I start. Then I'm going to go the period of 10 of those. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that would put me at 9 tenths. And I'm going to mark another asymptote. So I need to find the middle. So instead of counting 10, I'm going to count 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And put another one. And if I look at my tick marks, that's at 4, right? So that'll be 4 tenths. Now halfway in between those, so instead of going 5, I need to go 2.5 is where I'll get my peak. And I'll go 2.5, and that's where I'll get my bottom. And that's one cycle. And then you could repeat it and do another one. Okay, so catch me next time when we go over secant. It's going to look a lot like this graph. It's just going to be shifted. So instead of starting at an asymptote, we'll start at one of our peaks or valleys. And so then we'll have completed all 6 trig functions. So thank you so much for joining me, and we will see you next time.